No, we're gonna crack on with it, and then Stacie might join us when she finishes work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're not waiting on anyone else, although Jenny said she might try and make it next week, so fingers crossed on that one. But who knows who might drop in? That's the joy of life. Okay, so this kickoff question is probably going to be slightly pointed a little bit more towards Max, because of context and history. But Max, is Game of Thrones back?
Yeah, I think it's back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you happy?
I'm happy with it. It was thrilling, and it was refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I'm happy.
It's been long enough since, and it's different enough while retaining what's good about it.
What's like the main thing that's kept you watching this time around that makes you think it's back?
Well, it just the politics, I think, are what the best part about it, about Game of Thrones. Like season 1, like all the scheming, and like you just see that so clearly in this episode, and that's what stood out to me the most, and that's what I like. That's what keeps me interested and hooked about the show.
Yeah, I think they picked really good scenes to showcase that this first episode.
Yeah.
I'm pretty thrilled. There is one thing that I did notice, kind of, but it's a slightly small thing, and I don't know if it's something I don't quite know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, because it's the kind of thing I'd want, but it's not necessarily the kind of thing that everyone would want. Is if you talk to someone who's never seen anything to do with Game of Thrones before, and you describe them the pilot of the original Game of Thrones, or you describe them the pilot of this House of the Dragon, I suspect, right, that House of the Dragon is less compelling than the Game of Thrones description. It felt a little bit like, and again, not necessarily a bad thing, but House of the Dragon started out a little bit more like Game of Thrones season 2, which I definitely like, but it all
Season 2 start again. Well,
season 2 starts with sort of with Tyrion as hand of the king.
Ned dies. Yeah.
After Ned dies, it's in that kind of aftermath. And yeah, Tyrion gets appointed as hand of the king, hand to Joffrey, and but I mean, I'm talking more like a little bit more in terms of essence, like there's no there was
I really appreciate the flashback to the council and the previous king, the Viserys' grandfather, Jaharis, I think his name is.
Yeah.
I think that really did a lot to sort of like set up. That was, I think, better than the original Game of Thrones pilot, because in that, I think, like going in knowing nothing into that pilot, it's confusing because you don't really know who's relation to who and what's going on. But with this, it very, clearly tells you about, like, there's this king and there's this succession crisis, and now that, is could be happening again, and it could lead into chaos. So I think that scene, like that little bit of world building, really helped.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, I actually by the end of the first episode, I kind of knew what, like, I kind of felt like at the end of the pilot of Game of Thrones, I still felt quite disorientated. I still felt there was a lot of mystery, and the things that you hooked onto were the shock factors. Whereas with House of the Dragon, it's like in 1 hour they've got established characters. You've probably already decided who you like and who you don't like. And you probably feel with some degree of conviction. I think it was a better pilot. I don't know if it's one of those, if it has that lowest common denominator sort of hook, and I don't necessarily know if it should have that or if it wants that. Like I do unequivocally think that pilot for pilot, House of the Dragon is better, but because it has more of the parts of Game of Thrones that I like, the politics, the scheming, the layers of conflict that you've got there. So, throwing it over to you, Matt. How easy because like this exists within a predefined world? How easy was it for you to be introduced into the Game of Thrones world from just this episode alone? Because you haven't seen Game of Thrones, have you, Matt?
Yeah, I thought it was really nice, like having this as a foundation if I'm gonna go and watch the rest of it, just because it's so earlier in the timeline. I don't know if I got I guess the flashback would have provided more context because it was shown with the tying to the rest of it, if people had seen that. But I found it fine. Like, I think they showed enough of all the characters really well. You're saying that, like, the way that the other one was presented, the Game of Thrones pilot, like, it was more of a punch, but it didn't include a lot of characters and a lot of seeing everything. And that sort of was its strong suit. Right?
Actually, now that you mention it, yeah, like in the first episode of Game of Thrones, you were only introduced to like half the characters. If
was there like more war or something? Like, what was the hook?
Oh, there was more like in the first episode of Game of Thrones, there was more gratuitousness, right? So like there was more violence, there was more like sexual violence, there was more like shock, there was more incest, there was more like of all of the sort of the taboo stuff that people sort of come to know Game of Thrones for. Whereas in House of the Dragon, like it was less gratuitous, and the gratuitousness.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Yeah. There were some, but it wasn't.
There's a bit of gratuitousness, but it
had a point.
Yeah,
well, it's not like it's not front and center. It's not just like gratuitousness to the max for no reason. Like it had more like
it had a lot more point to the story,
tied to the characters.
Yeah,
and what I don't know if liked is the right word here, but what I thought was worthwhile was the only bit of sexual violence that we saw in this episode was against a man, whereas of course in the early parts of Game of Thrones it was like. There was most of the sexual violence was against women, right? So
yeah,
and when I say sexual violence, I mean the guy getting his knob cut off, right? Like
yeah,
and I genuinely think that had a point, because one of the things I think is going to be quite important going forward is how Daemon Targaryen has like made the gold cloaks like supremely loyal to him, and I think they even mention, is it 2,000 strong that army is? That's a pretty big force.
And the I can't remember the guy's name, but one of the guys on the council gave him that army, right? Like
Otto Hightower. Yeah, he seems to be like the sort of like Tywin Lannister kind of type,
strategist
kind of
guy.
Character, right? Like, ultimate schemer.
Yeah, although I think there's a very big distinction between like Otto Hightower and Littlefinger, is that Littlefinger comes from a much lower house. Like his original home was like some little 2-bedroom detached on off the fingers, right? Whereas Otto Hightower is Hightower. Like, we knew kind of who the Hightowers were in Game of Thrones.
Does he live in a high tower?
Well, I think, but this
or
is.
Does he live in a little pink house?
He's from Old Town, which has like the high tower. A high tower there, which I guess they maybe live in. I'm not.
Well, it sounds like their names are important or something.
Well, as I understand it,
names are.
As I understand it, the high tower refers to the Citadel, but am I?
Right. That makes sense.
I think you're right.
And the high towers are the stewards of Old Town, where the Citadel, and also the that's where the sort of the head of the church, their high septim is, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Possibly, or
so
was.
That was where it originally was before, I think, Aegon's conquest, and then after the Targaryens took over, it moved to King's Landing. So I think a lot of because in Game of Thrones, the Red Keep is like the center of the faith, right? So I think it like moved from like the center of Westeros used to be like Old Town, but
I think
moved to King's Landing.
Oh, I don't know if it's the Red Keep. I think the Red Keep is like the political. Is the Red Keep where the Hand lives?
Oh, the Red Keep.
Oh, no, that's the Tower of the Hand. No, the Red. Yeah, the Red Keep is where
the place that gets blown up, that Cersei blows up.
Yeah, the place that Cersei blows up. Yeah.
Whatever that's called.
That's the Sept of Baelor, I think it is, if I remember correctly.
That's it.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, yeah, I think so. Yeah, Daemon Targaryen and his army of gold cloaks, they're going to be like something. They're going to be a political force in this, and I think that's going to be quite interesting. I'm interested in. Is it Corus Valerian, the sea snake,
the guy? Husband of the queen that never was?
That's the one. Yeah, Lord of the Tides.
Yeah,
I am interested in this fella because, first of all, you got that triarchy thing, which I think is going to be like one of the sort of side plots in it.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see where this goes. I hope that we're going to see some good sea battles in this, because I think that was one of the things that Game of Thrones was kind of like lacking was some good sea battles, and we were teased some good sea battles, and did we ever get them? Like we Battle of Blackwater was about as close as it came, really.
But like all the sea battles were like at night. And
need some day sea battles.
Yeah,
where you can see stuff
with dragons, with like 7 dragons. Like, come on, like that'd be sick.
I'm also interested to see how the dragons get taken out. I'm sure this is covered in the books, although you never know, they might take some artistic license and switch it around for the show. Especially with George R.R. Martin being rather closely involved with operations. I think when they make deviations with George's advice, or under George's advice, I think they can work. They probably work quite well, right? Presumably, I would hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when they use exclamations and they say like "by the 7 something," that's referring to the number of dragons.
No. Oh, the 7. The 7 is the gods. Those are
okay.
It's a polytheistic, like they talk about the new gods and the old gods. The new gods are the 7. It's like 7 different deities, and then the old gods are tree.
How many dragons are there right now?
There's like in the like 10, like more than 10. I think I'm not. There's a fair few.
Okay.
And
in the time I think after this time period that they're covering in the show, they go extinct shortly after, or around the end, I guess, and then they don't come back until the end of the first season of Game of Thrones. Yeah. So this is like leading up to the end of the dragons and what really is the source of the Targaryens' power.
So do you think the end of this series, the end of this show, the House of the Dragon, is going to be the bit where the people storm the dragon pits? So
is that where they all are?
Is that I don't know. I don't know the exact lore about how the dragons went extinct, but I think that is probably going to be how the show ends, or at least how this arc of the show
because
end. Because I think they said they might cover other areas of Targaryen history after they're finished covering.
I'd be interested.
This particular era.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they would do. I mean, Aegon's conquest is a little on the nose, but could be something. I think they said maybe like generally
the Blackfire rebellions, or I don't know when that happens. I think that's later on.
Is Daemon Black? Is Daemon Targaryen not the same Daemon? No, he's not, is he?
I don't know. I think there's another civil war that happens after this. There's a lot of stuff like
Black
happens. There's like 170 years in between now and.
Oh my goodness, that's a long time. Yeah.
It was so the Blackfire Rebellion was a war fought between the loyalist forces of King Daeron the second, Daeron Targaryen, second of his name, and the rebel forces of his half brother Daemon Blackfire. And when does that take place? 196 AC. So that's in the future. So
Yeah, that's like 60 years after this, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I mean, if this, yeah, so
90.
if House of the Dragon ends on a high note, then that could be something that there would be maybe some crossover characters. Perhaps they might age a fair bit, but there would be like common links and stuff like that, especially if they're going into like some kind of dare I use the term expanded universe.
Yeah,
But because it does seem like everything's a metaverse these days with the Star Wars and the Marvel and even the DC.
They gotta find a way to they gotta find ways to like expand it or keep it evolving. I think that's probably why they do it.
Well, that's the thing. But the thing is, right? I'll defend the sort of the metaverse of Westeros because it is actually a deeply interesting world where almost like all the others are kind of like made up as you go along, particularly the Marvels and the DCs, and also with Star Wars, right? Like you could say that Star Wars is kind of a rich world, but not really. Like not when you compare it to something like Westeros and Essos and all the geography there within. Like there's so much to it that I don't think it almost feels like it's a waste not to have more, like it's a waste to leave it at Game of Thrones. But that's just my spicy hot take. I actually didn't dislike Daemon Targaryen as much as I like, and actually one of the things that I think is going to be kind of interesting is if is it Corlys Velaryon? Like he seems to be a little bit like favorable towards Daemon, even though like he's kind of set up to be a villain, and I wonder why this is. Like I feel right they're doing some bait. They're setting us up for a bait and switch here. I kind of feel that Otto Hightower is not going to be as like he's going to be quite devious and villainous. I don't think we're going to, as an audience, like him as much as we do at the beginning. And I think someone like Daemon Targaryen, I think he's going to be the, like the problematic favorite in a way, right? Like,
well, he does like to poke the bear with the stick. He just likes to.
But like so there was a stage in Game of Thrones where like religious extremism sort of kind of gripped the capital a little bit, and the king of at the time, Tommen, was like considered to be like a good king but a weak king, and like it was one of those times on the show where you wished for a Joffrey, where you wished for like a vindictive king, a vicious king, because he would like cut down all the frustrating opposition there. And I think that whereas no one in their right mind would genuinely want someone as vicious as King Joffrey at the time, someone like Daemon Targaryen, who is ambitious and intelligent and a little bit more politically minded, could very well wield the reins of power a little bit more interestingly than than just someone who is outright vicious.
Well, they don't want him to have the throne, right? That's what the council was talking about.
I can see Daemon Targaryen doing some things that would actually make us quite warm up to him. At the moment, he's presented as a bad guy almost, as a villain, as someone who's a bit slimy, as someone who's a bit ambitious, as someone who is kind of aggressive and has like has a vicious streak or a violent streak. Doesn't, but like, and I was gonna say,
he took out the horse. He took out the horse. The jousting.
Yeah, exactly,
like,
exactly.
Can you do like?
He's like he's like season 1 Jaime Lannister kind of.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Season 1 Jaime Lannister kind of vibes.
Poor sportsmanship.
Well, but the thing is, it's like other people are playing the sly game. They're just getting away with it a little bit better.
Yeah, well, sometimes you have to cheat to win, you know?
Well, and that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, is that because what was kind of interesting is how the jousting was used as a metaphor for, of course, the childbirth and all that kind of stuff as well, which was the obvious montage
very contrasted
metaphor.
with that. Yeah, because I was thinking about the. I remember it was like there was talk about like the responsibility. The mother was saying, or the queen when she was alive, it says your battlefield in life is childbirth.
Yeah, that was just so like.
And she doesn't want that. She like doesn't want that as her calling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she wants to fly in the dragon. It gets dirty.
You want to root for her at the end when she, is the heir.
Yeah.
Right, and like you want her to go off and.
But not to get too far off the tangent, Chris. You were saying just the jousting.
So the Daemon Targaryen was jousting with at the tourney. He was jousting with Otto Hightower's oldest son. So that was like clearly a metaphor, kind of.
Was that the last battle?
I think it was the last. It's the battle where
the guy with the ball and chain.
That's no, that was someone else.
Or no, that was was the first person? Was that the person
guy,
he chose? Daemon chose first.
Yeah, the guy
his eldest son.
I think the guy that he took out with the ball and chain was Sir Criston Cole, who I believe is a Dornish fella. The Otto Hightower, he's the guy that took out the horse, right? And and he did that. That's almost like that strikes me as being a bit of foreshadowing for how he might take out Otto Hightower in the future. Like he might underwrite Otto Hightower. Yeah. He might outwit him, outpolitics him. We already know that
showing of his stance against him in a small way at start.
I mean, I think the thing is, right, we like, okay, just off the bat now on the like, how do you guys feel about Otto Hightower, knowing what we know now?
Just the whole, he's like already, pimping out his daughter.
That's exactly what I would,
he's like using he used his daughter to like dress up. He's dressed up in your mother's, wasn't that?
Yeah. He's trying to
mother's dress to go comfort influence the king.
Yeah, so, he wants her to, be with him so she can be the mother of a new heir, I think, is his ultimate.
Yeah, I was like, what a political move, right? It's just very uncomfortable to see where he was like, well, take one of your mother's dresses and, go in there. And I was like, where's this going?
It's like, a bastard son would probably do quite well in a battle of succession, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, yeah, with some foreshadowing afoot there, but and Otto Hightower is established as an ambitious character, and it's kind of interesting. It's like the king kind of like almost saw right through it, but like at the council meeting that was called to discuss the succession, like he was right, like he kind of called it out almost, right? Like he certainly felt like the council there were crows pecking at
they all want his they all want his power and influence, basically, like the pecking order. They're all just trying to, instead of letting him choose, I guess.
Yeah. Now, do you think it's at all possible? I don't know. I keep chewing this one over as a possible theory that Daemon Targaryen might have had something to do with Queen Emma's kid's death, basically. Like,
I don't think so necessarily. I mean, maybe, but they don't. I don't think there's anything that indicate.
The thing that indicated it for me is that he was very confident that this threat to his power. Like he was very confident that he'd maintain himself as the king's heir regardless of this kid.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
He didn't seem fazed or surprised or anything, really. And
But,
I don't know,
yeah.
like, could you have sabotaged the C-section or bribed the maesters or I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean,
You'd think that the Maesters would be more like loyal to like Otto Hightower. You know, the Citadel is an old town, so I don't know. Because he wasn't present at the birth, and you don't see him with the baby at all after.
Yeah, that contrast though between the tourney and the childbirth scene was like some of those cuts were like. There's one where it's like an immediate, like joust right to the king's face. Cut.
yeah, I don't know. But yeah, like I don't know. Yeah, Daemon Targaryen possibly like, he seemed somewhat unfazed by the child's death, which I don't know. Like it does lead me to believe that he might have.
It just
might have
seems like
something.
Maybe he'll use his
arrogant
army
to
for
me.
something. He's got a lot of people on his side, so he's got like ammo to do something.
I wonder how this triarchy is going to come into play here. Because Corlys Targaryen and Daemon Corlys Velaryon and Daemon Targaryen, they seem to have some kind of understanding, or they seem to see eye to eye in one capacity or another. Could it possibly be the case? And also, one thing about Daemon Targaryen that we know off the bat is that he seems to have this talent for bolstering up force. You give him the gold cloaks, he comes back with.
He made, he totally made a speech about, what was it, like a day of his honor? Made that little speech in the.
Exactly, yeah.
Lord was.
So he might muster up a bit of military force to deal with this triarchy, something which, of course, the king is ignoring, and also Otto Hightower.
Yeah.
So and the military strategy of Daemon Targaryen might possibly, like, it might make him seem like a more sensible choice for an heir, especially if, for example, with Rhaenyra, is if she if she seems to obviously be very close with Alicent Hightower, and that could very well be a sort of a parallel to the close relationship the king has with Otto Hightower, and if so. It could, and Otto Hightower doesn't seem to consider the triarchy any kind of threat or any kind of problem. Of course, with any kind of Game of Thrones lore, we know right off the bat, if there's something that's a problem and people are just dismissing it, it's almost certainly a big problem. And also, and I can't imagine why they'd bring in
time.
Exactly. So it could very well be the case that Rhaenyra will, she will perhaps lack the military judgment that Daemon Targaryen would have, and that might actually cause a rift between the powers that be in Westeros. There might be people who who have legitimate concerns about, or who legitimately favor Daemon because he has a track record of military strength in a way, whereas then of course there'll be other people with Rhaenyra who have a preference for respecting the king, respecting the king's heir, respecting the king's declarations, and also possibly might appreciate a less militaristic approach to governing, I guess, maybe.
Because Daemon, he thought that he was gonna get the throne, right? He thought he was sort of entitled to it. It seemed like. As a brother.
Well,
he always knew that he could be out, that there could be an heir that would take the place over him, but
because he called his brother weak and that was the scene where he was like, the king sat on the chair and cut himself, like on the hand, right, or a finger or something.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy about it.
Yeah, that kind of there is a kind of like theory going around, or not theory going around, but like an idea going around that like the throne can reject the king, in terms of like if a king doesn't sit easy on the throne and gets cut a lot,
right,
that might be some kind of like foreshadowing that the throne is likely to like reject the king or something like that. I think we all know that King Viserys is likely to die pretty soon. Do you think he's going to go in episode 2?
I don't know. But
I'm not sure exactly about the timescale of this show, because I know that there is an older actress that's going to be playing Rhaenyra in later episodes, so I don't know how many episodes it's going with the younger actress, so I know there's going to be a time skip, at least one time skip, so
yeah,
it could be next episode, it could be
what did the king basically tell Rhaenyra? Like, the king told her that, like, she had to understand the dragons and not trifle with them, because that was where all the power was held, right? Isn't that what he sort of explained?
Yeah.
Is that like a secret? Is there something like secret about that? Because he said it
all
was
right,
like
yeah.
the king controlling them,
or I'm not entirely sure, and I don't know if it's necessarily outlined. I believe there are other. It's not just Targaryens that ride dragons. I think even in this story in House of the Dragon, I think there are other
Targaryens can too.
Yeah, and I think even
but they have a lot of them. They have a lot of them. I guess that's the point.
Yeah, and I think Massaria, the mistress that Daemon was with,
right,
might be riding one as well. I was kind of getting that vibe, but not in that. I wasn't that was not innuendo.
Just saying it basically was. But yeah, I'm excited to see like where it goes, the relationship between like Alicent and Rhaenyra too, because they're really close.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting, relationship to see how that's going to like politically play out. What is quite interesting is the ending. Like that's where they drop the big lore bombshell, which I don't know if it's going to mean anything past episode 1. But it did give it, but it did make me very interested, which was basically the thing about the Targaryen dynasty and the thing about the Targaryen line of succession seems to be this secret, this story that Aegon didn't just conquer Westeros because he could, but also because he had a vision of the events of Game of Thrones and felt compelled to basically like mount an army and to put the series of events in motion that would then lead to the Game of Thrones that would happen like hundreds of years later. And that was really good. Also, of course, we saw the cat's paw dagger, which was the dagger used to kill the Night King. And I think that is kind of interesting because perhaps it was right up until Robert's Rebellion where that secret was kind of lost.
Yeah.
I'd imagine so, right? Like that, but that was like the Song of Ice and Fire, the thing that almost sort of separates the Targaryen dynasty from everything else, is that secret, that story. And of course that's such a George R.R. Martin thing to have, that the story is the thread that runs through the entire Game of Thrones story, like the whole Game of Thrones world, the thing that ties it all together is the power of this one story, and it sort of ties in a little bit to Tyrion's speech at the end as well, at the end of season 8, which sort of is sort of
So
the
that's
far
like a
end of that
story
thread.
that's like passed down constantly.
Yeah.
Or
It's just like
are
it's the
dreams
story.
very important in the Game of Thrones series and this one? I guess somewhat, like the meaning of them.
Yeah, dreams and foreshadowing and prophecy are well, they were definitely a theme in Game of Thrones. Now, whether or not that theme will then come across to House of the Dragon remains to be seen. Probably not, but could easily be wrong. Yeah, I mean, this is for me personally 10 out of 10. Like, everything tied in nicely. Everything I felt was paced well. You had lots of action. You had lots of good dialogue moments. The characters were set up rather well. Like, I kind of had I feel like I had a decent feel for most of the characters that were on screen. One of the things I did like about the pilot is that it didn't over exposition itself. I noticed that in the pilot of Game of Thrones, a lot of people were like pointing out who the other characters were. There was a little of this here and there, but like the scene that actually like was particularly hard on the exposition that felt a little bit out of place was when Daemon Targaryen pointed out that Otto Hightower's wife had died like a couple of years ago. Like, he said it in such a way that like it didn't feel like a way that he would have said that in a conversation. He said it in a way that felt like it was exposition for a show. But other than that, really, like all of the context I felt was given in a really natural way. Unlike, of course, Game of Thrones, where there was like the first scene between Jaime and Cersei Lannister, like they were talking about like he might as well have just introduced himself as her brother to her. Like it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So Stacie, how do you find the first episode then?
It was good. I didn't have any expectations because the bar was really low. I was like, we'll see how this goes. And I was like, okay, all right. I dig it. Like, I think I was talking to you, Chris, about how Hightower, the shady man, sending his daughter to the king, like right after the death of his wife.
Yeah, like, come on.
I don't know if you guys have ever like heard the Reba McEntire song Fancy, but that was the first thing in my head. It's all like, oh, time for you to go sleep with like a rich man. Go get what you can get, kind of thing.
For me, I want my power and status.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder if he's going to put more pressure on her over time.
Maybe.
We'll see. Like,
but it was great because the king, like, usually when people have power, someone like close to them dies. Like, oh, well, she was a whore. It doesn't matter. But the king is genuinely upset that his wife and kid are dead.
Yeah.
And like didn't have time to think about banging some 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And
what did she bring? She brought like
for now
something.
Brought a book.
Brought a story as like a. Yeah. This is actually I'm here for a different reason, but this is the reason I've chosen to be here.
Yeah. But Max, for now, he's not thinking about having sex with a 13-year-old. So,
yeah.
How long has he been working on that sculpture project, though?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, he's got a hobby. Good for him.
He's got being king, and then he's got this. This is his break from being king. This is a break from being king.
He's like, it's 11 o'clock. Why are you in my chambers? I am working.
I have this, okay?
I will say I have read some spoilers from Fire and Blood, so I sort of know vaguely what's going to happen coming up, so I don't want to give anything away.
Max, I literally just read about how they're all connected, and I saw so many things. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, that's where it started. So I was like, all right.
See, I have a completely different experience because I'm taking all this fresh in, knowing like nothing that happens later. So I'm glad we have a diverse.
I didn't mean to. I was just looking at how Daenerys was like.
It's all good.
What's it called? Related to everybody, kind of thing. And then I the last family tree. I was like, shit.
Yeah, I made a whole family tree to keep track of everything.
Fancy.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the Ancestry.com link?
Yeah, I sent you that link in case you're interested. There is a little bit of spoilers, I guess, for the show if you look at the characters and who they who their offspring is and who their,
Yeah.
who's all that stuff. But if you want to know how these people are related to like Daenerys and Jon Snow and stuff, then you can just look at that.
Oh wow.
It's
I need.
a
I
lot.
need.
So if you don't want to know, don't look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Stacie,
I
one of the things I wanna hear what you think, because you're of course a legendary Matt Smith fan. Did
I
he?
have a tattoo of a fez and a bow tie. Of course I am.
How do you feel about Daemon
Okay.
Targaryen? And are you biased because of him?
Am I biased because it's Matt Smith? No.
Yeah.
So Daemon Targaryen seems like the cool uncle who's gonna murder your ass later. Like I feel that he's gonna try some shit. Sorry, I don't mean to curse, but he's hardcore, but he has that like loving dad kind of thing with her. But like as soon as she's named the heir, I think that just switches, and he's like, "No, I'm gonna have to take her down."
He's got like a secret. He's got like a secret dagger or something.
Yeah.
I was calling
like,
him the one that pokes the bear with the stick.
Yeah. But no, when he came in with the guard at the beginning and just like murdered all the people who were like the rapists and everything, I was like, okay.
Now was that just like a show of fear? They just picked random people, right? Those weren't actually bad people. He just was okay, we're just gonna create fear and put people in their place and. Right?
I think it probably was actual criminals. I likened it to, I think there was well, I think in season 2 of Game of Thrones, prior to the big battle, Bronn, who is made head of the Gold Cloaks, does something very similar. He rounds up and puts in prison all of the known thieves, and I think in a lot of cases, like, it seems to me, but again, this is just my lay of the land, is they sort of made all their arrests on the same day in an incredibly brutal and public display, with the goal of scaring criminals,
using fear to put them in their place.
Exactly.
It did seem very spontaneous, though, the way that it was shot. I was like, all right, let's go out. We're gonna be the heroes here, and we're just gonna go out and we're gonna take some people out.
But if you've got,
I could also.
What?
I think that Daemon Targaryen's justification wasn't all that bad either. Like, you've got basically hundreds of some of the richest and most powerful people in the realm coming to the capital. Surely you need to up security about as much as possible, right?
How many problems have they had with people, though? I wonder.
King's Landing's known for being pretty bad with crime, as I understand it. There's never been like a time in any kind of Game of Thrones where like King's Landing has ever been seen as a safe place.
Right.
In terms of that regard, like it's so I don't know. Like, I think what that particular scene was a demonstration that Daemon Targaryen might be like a problematic pragmatist insofar that he might cut corners, he might enjoy the violence and aggression, but also like he believes it has a purpose, and if you and it's almost like that Tywin Lannister, you can only help people from a position of strength. Is that a Tywin Lannister?
I don't know.
Or is that like
he definitely wants
that's like
wants the throne.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't think that was Tywin Lannister that said that, but it is like a Lannister kind of philosophy that like you can only help people from a position of strength, and that I think might be a lot of the thinking of Daemon Targaryen there.
He has an army.
He has an army,
Yeah.
2,000 strong. Yeah, fiercely loyal.
You could do a lot with 2,000 people.
Yeah, and that's going to be kind of interesting. That they send him away to the Vale, and he's like his gold cloak's still like fiercely loyal to him. Is that is that going to be a political force?
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Especially if they trust him and he's got people that support him and believe in him.
Although one thing I think is a little bit interesting that could change the dynamics of this show is, of course, Westeros, very big, but they have dragons, and like sending Daemon Targaryen off to the Eyrie, like that doesn't strike me as being as big of a deal as if dragons didn't exist. Like, I don't know how long it takes to get to the Eyrie, but like I would imagine like an hour on a dragon, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with how creative they got in the last couple of seasons with how fast people travel, I think a few hours is definitely
Yeah.
to the Eyrie, sure.
Yeah, or like less than a day.
For sure, less than a day.
I mean, we know, I think, that with the Beyond the Wall episode in Game of Thrones, Daenerys flew from Dragonstone right up to Beyond the Wall pretty much overnight, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think it was, because literally Gendry sent a raven, right? He sent a raven. That was so ridiculous. He sent a raven, and it got to Daenerys, and then she left, and then she made it in like a day. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like a raven and a dragon in a day. So yeah, like I don't know, maybe like 4 hours then at most, right? To get to the
maybe just showing him riding off on the dragon though isn't really a like show or anything. It's just like, oh, he has a dragon, because they all fly dragons. Yeah. Look at this super cool black and red dragon he has.
So yeah.
Have you guys talked about how the king has tetanus?
Oh yeah,
I didn't. Oh yeah, I didn't think of it.
The king totally has tetanus from getting cut by the throne.
Oh, the thing that won't heal on his back.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't have like a whole thing to cure it because it's like way back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I mean, that's. Yeah. One thing I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts on, Stace, is do you think Daemon Targaryen had any hand in killing the king's heir?
Rewatching the scene, because the king is so distraught about his wife being dead, and the guy holding the baby kind of like holds him up so you can't really see him. So like maybe he was poisoning or choking him, so that Daemon would be named the heir. Yeah. Probably, yeah.
I mean, I'm not necessarily. Yeah, like I mean, he could have bribed the maesters, threatened the maesters, recruited the maesters to his side, or one of them. Possibly, yeah. I mean, the thought passes through my head because he seems very confident that he's going to maintain his status as the heir.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Daemon bribed him to kill the baby, to kill the kid, if it was a boy.
It seems so. Like he didn't seem. And also, actually, interestingly enough, when he was in the pleasure house for the second scene, the heir for a day scene, he did look a little bit remorseful before celebrating.
Maybe in seeing what it's done to his brother, but other than that, I don't think he gave a shit.
I think, I don't know, like I think he gave a shit for a moment. Like he was like, oh
yeah, but for a moment, but it passed. It's like real fast, like
I think Daemon's ambitious, but I don't think he like needs to be king. I don't think he's like necessarily as tyrannical.
He doesn't need to be king. He wants to be king.
Yeah, but I
So,
think
like,
I don't think
drive.
he bribed the maesters or anything. I mean, it's possible.
I don't think. Yeah, there's nothing conclusive this episode. Like, I think if we do start seeing it, it'll be something that either unfolds or remains a mystery. It'd be one of those things that's like designed to be ambiguous. I almost felt like. Sorry, Max.
I think that after that they're sort of making a point that she had already had so many stillbirths and everything, and after so many generations of incest and stuff that they've been up to, that I think that it's entirely possible that it was natural death.
That's a really good point. Yeah, totally. Do you think it could be deliberate ambiguousness?
I think they're ambiguous on purpose, but I interpret it as that she had that conversation with Rhaenyra, what's her name, the daughter, before about how that's their role in the society or whatever, and that ends up which kills her later in the episode. So and she talked about all her already dead children. So
yeah, she was done.
Yeah.
Shows like the flaws with the Targaryen, ideas, their family, what's causing their madness and their downfall.
Yeah. Just because it was the first episode, you can have all the conspiracy theories right now until they're proven wrong.
Well, think about it too. Like they go so long, like trying to get a son for an heir, and like they're unwilling to break tradition, only to after trying for so long, having to break tradition. It's like.
Well, and they did that because the queen said she was done, and then after the son died, then like now what?
Only like a matter of time before traditions sort of have to become like more flexible. There's not enough like slack in the culture for it to succeed, and maybe we'll see how that becomes its downfall. I mean, maybe there are like axes that the culture measures that lead to its own strangling.
Well, one of the main themes of Game of Thrones, which seems to I suspect might carry across to House of the Dragon, is the discarding of certain traditions, the idea of society moving forward and a society coming of age of sorts, out with the old, in with the new, reject tradition, embrace modernity type of thing. Yeah, like cycles, like it's a new dawn.
But it is like, I mean, because people want status and power, keeping certain traditions the same, that's sort of what can lead to downfall.
Yeah.
Because that power just centralizes and then forces a certain tradition.
Yeah.
Which is not a cycle. The same thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna be quite interested to learn about some of the characters that we were kind of introduced to a little bit, but the more will sort of unfold. I'm interested to see particularly Corlys Velaryon. I think he's going to be a very interesting character, particularly when it comes to, because I think they might be featuring, is it the Battle of the Stepstones? Is that possible? That might be something that might be coming up possibly in this season. But also Kristen Cole, who we saw in the tourney, and also in the trailer. I think he might be potentially an interesting character, Dornish fella. So we might actually get some Dornish action on the go. Sir Harold Westerling, the bald guy who I think was Rhaenyra's like bodyguard, protector. The big bald fella. He seemed pretty interesting.
And the
guy
from Outlander.
The guy stood out from Outlander. Yep. He's
I was like, I know that guy.
Dude, I was like, Outlander. It's funny as my boss looks like him. It's just funny.
Very good.
But yeah, that guy Dougal. He was
Yeah.
Dougal.
Yep. Have you watched that show, Chris?
I have not. No.
You should. It's really good.
I've watched all of it.
It's really good. You should watch it. I think that he's gonna be
One of the guys in the audience during that tourney looked like the Tin Man. I don't know if you saw him. The top left frame. Anyway, what were you gonna say, Chris?
I'm also kind of interested. Was it Lord Lionel Strong who seemed to be like the big cheerleader for Daemon on the council? And I think we saw him in the brothel.
I don't remember.
In the second scene in the brothel, like he was one of the people that sat on the small council. I think it's quite likely that all the people on the small council are they're going to be like relevant or important in some way, right?
Yeah, and Prince Daemon has a didn't they call him like a lady wife? He has a wife, right?
He does.
yes.
Emma Aaron. I don't think we've seen her yet.
We haven't, because they were like sending him away to her.
Emma Aaron was the queen. I think Damon's with a different Aaron, or maybe they have the same name. I'm not sure.
Right. No,
Right.
I think you're right. What?
Yeah, but they were like sending Daemon away, back to her or something. I think at the end.
Yeah, back to he was married off to some noble person in the Vale, I guess. Which I guess it's probably his cousin, because Emma Aaron was the queen's, who was the king's cousin. Viserys. Viserys' cousin.
Yeah.
Did any of you catch the reason why he was having trouble with the mistress?
Because she wasn't blonde.
Okay. I was all like, I don't understand. But okay, that makes sense.
What with the first time, the second time, both times?
The first time that we see him, I covered my eyes just kidding. I don't want to see Matt Smith's junk, and so I covered my eyes just in case. I was like, no, I don't want to see it.
You don't see it. You don't see a sonic screwdriver.
That's what my husband said. He's like, oh, it didn't show it. I was like, I just wanted to make sure, because I don't want that in my life.
No, but one of the things I did I thought there was some rather clever towel maneuvering.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it was like, I don't know, like it was very close. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like you turned away, then you turned towards the camera, and then the towel was just there in time. And it was like good towel work.
It's like, how far can we push this? How far can we push this towel technique?
Yeah. I have to say, I never thought I'd hear the doctor say the C word either.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
that
when
did
he
happen.
said that, I was like, that was well placed.
I was like,
very
wow.
nice.
Yeah.
Sort of like with his junk in the towel, right?
That was really good, though. That was a good line.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite words, too. I was like, good for him.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll be seeing more of Massaria for sure. She's credited quite highly in the cast list, as is Sir Kristen Cole. So I think those are going to be two characters that are definitely they're going to be players for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see how the throne changes over time, because right now it looks so much more badass than it did in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, do you think it will transition
to
How so?
Yeah, it took a bunch of it down, and I was like, it looks so much cooler right now than it does in Game of Thrones. Like,
the throne, the chair, the throne on the chair.
There's like way
so much so that the person in power is like cutting themselves.
Yeah. But it's just it's cool though, because it's like a walk.
What a metaphor,
up to
right?
the road. It's awesome.
It's like the knives it's like the blades represent everybody trying to take your power from you when you're king.
Yeah, I think the story is that Aegon's dragon made the throne by burning like the swords of like the armies he defeated or something, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Although, see, this is the thing I'm not sure about one way or the other, right? Is the throne that we see in House of the Dragon the way that it is because it's designed to be closer to what the books describe it as? Closer, not directly the same. Or is it designed so much, is it going to be like sanded down? Is there like a metaphor in play here? Are we going to see in later seasons of House of the Dragon that a future king or queen might remove the excess swords, that it might become more I suppose what you might like visually impotent or softer or safer, or
it might also just be destroyed when the
maybe it's
when
a
the
metaphor
Targaryens
of, like,
fall.
It'll degrade over time as the story progresses.
Yeah.
It'll represent the downfall, the visual image of the downfall of the house.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, we might see some. Yeah. So I'm not sure, but and of course, actually, one of the things as well that is kind of interesting is, of course, they have saddles, dragon saddles in this show.
Yes.
Did they not have that in Game of Thrones?
They did not have that in Game of Thrones.
She rode bareback.
And I was a little bit disappointed because there was some foreshadowing, like when we saw Tyrion design a saddle for Bran so that he could ride a horse despite losing the use of his legs. And I thought that was kind of foreshadowing that Tyrion would design a saddle for a dragon. And I'm kind of disappointed that didn't come to fruition. It would have been a little thing for sure, but like it would have tied Tyrion in.
Didn't need it. She was a badass.
Well, I mean, yeah, she had plenty of plot armor up until that point, but like it would have demonstrated that Tyrion would have had his intelligence would have been his weapon, and that would have been his weapon in the Long Night. That he would have designed some of the equipment that would have could have been used against the White Walkers, because actually he ended up being kind of useless in the big final battle, the Long Night, the battle for Winterfell, right?
Yeah, did he do anything? He's probably entirely useless.
Yeah, like even the big intellectual discoveries were done by Samwell Tarly for the most part, right?
Yeah, entirely.
Yeah.
Right.
So even his intelligence was not basically utilized, and I think that's, so if he had designed, he'd at least...
Tyrion fell off a cliff after he went to Essos. Just full stop.
Yeah, putting having to hand your own fecal matter through a little hole in a crate probably does irreparable damage to your mental health, I'm sure.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a monkey throwing feces at something outside a cage.
Or maybe it was a dehydration, I guess. I don't. Who knows? But
that's all right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So who's the smartest character so far? Who do you think's going to be? Who is the Varys, the Littlefinger, the Qyburn of the episode of the show so far? Do you think?
Otto Hightower.
Hightower, is it?
Yeah, we were talking about that, Chris. How Hightower is the little finger of the show.
Yeah,
I was comparing him more to like Tywin Lannister. But sort of, I guess, a little bit of both.
No, I think actually he might very well have more similarities to Tywin than Littlefinger. Littlefinger has climbed further. He was of a lower class from the Fingers, and he married his way and even worked his way up. When he became Master of Coin, like he managed to get a lot of powerful friends in that position, and then marry his way into a very high status of power. Whereas with Otto Hightower, he was born into one of the most powerful families in the realm anyway. He might be ambitious, but where do you go from basically being a reasonably major lord? I mean, the Hightowers they're like one of the oldest families.
Well, from being hand of the king, you can just murder the king and his whole family and become king.
Well, you probably just lose your job, right?
Yeah, I don't think. I wonder what the dragons would have to say about that.
Well, maybe that's part of it, is that he killed the dragons too.
Well,
Yeah, they gotta die
this
out
might be what it's
somehow.
all about.
The real question is, what are the enneagrams of all the characters? I'd be interested to see like what tools each character equips, like what they each think is powerful, the most powerful tool to use.
Yeah, their weapon of choice.
Whether it's invisible or it's a physical
Well,
object.
I know there's a lot of history with Daemon's sword, Black Sister, right? That was like,
oh yeah,
what one
Dark
of
Sister.
Dark Sister. Yeah, that's one of Aegon's sister wives. One of their swords, right? Rhaenys' sword or Visenya's.
Gives her like some kind of necklace or something too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he gave that to Rhaenyra, which I think that's leading to that they're gonna merge those two sides of the houses down the line. Oh. There's gonna be a political
alliance,
Targaryen marriage.
Yeah, is it?
Cool.
It's kind of interesting that like we this is the first instance of Valyrian steel being something that isn't a sword or a dagger. I know in the Song of Ice and Fire, Euron Greyjoy had armor that was made from Valyrian steel, if I remember correctly, but I don't recall anything such as jewelry made from Valyrian steel. It's kind of an interesting like a metaphor there that like we talk about in the realm of Game of Thrones is like a woman's battlefield being the birthing bed,
or the
and
image,
it's like
the face of power or something,
or that like, you know, marriage is their political vehicle, and it's like, well, I suppose jewelry in terms of a you know, like a traditional courting gift, a traditional sort of like you know, accessory, I guess, you know, is kind of like, you might call it like a woman's sword, as it were.
Symbol power.
Yeah, like a sort of a But it's going to be interesting because, of course, this is going to challenge all kinds of gender stereotypes, isn't it, in the world of Game of Thrones? So.
Yep.
Yeah.
And well, empires fall on whether or not a male heir is produced, and it's all up to the woman can bear an heir or not.
Yeah.
Heir bear.
Heir bear.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, one of the things, though, the prequel limitations of this is that we kind of know how much the world is going to change as a result of the challenge to patriarchal orthodoxy in this show, which is to say, like, not that much, right? Like, it's not that 100 and whatever years later in the events of Game of Thrones, they're suddenly in an egalitarian society. You know, Cersei Lannister still talks about using all the feminine charms and attributes as levers of power. So, yeah, like, despite all of the challenge to gender norms that we're likely to see in House of the Dragon, we already know that it's not going to amount to much. It'll amount to something, because when Cersei becomes queen in Game of Thrones, like, it's not as challenged as much as like Rhaenyra, or even the Queen That Never Was.
The Lannisters are scary.
Well, yeah.
Who wants to fuck with them? Nobody.
Yeah. Especially after blowing up the Sept of Baelor.
Yeah, but at that point, like, there was like no legitimate claim anymore. She was just like I have the power. This is that's it. Like, no, by a birthright. She didn't have any Targaryen blood, allegedly, or otherwise. Robert had some weird claim.
Yeah, like I mean, it depends how far into the lore you want to go, and I don't know how much the show kind of glosses over it. But even um, Robert Baratheon had some kind of lineage linking back to the
Yeah.
Targaryens. But then again, so did Cersei Lannister. Like they all did, really. I think most of the families of Westeros, within a few generations, could link themselves back to Targaryens.
If you go
It
far
was
down the line enough,
exactly, yeah. I mean, it's a very much a a two-tiered class system, um, which is what kind of made Littlefinger an exceptional character to me, because I think he was like, and also, particularly with Littlefinger, he's like the only character I think that broke that. You could kind of say, well, Varys, he sat on the small council, but he was always looked down upon. He was always seen as secondary. He was always seen as only ever there because he could offer something, and was never, given any kind of title, any kind of rights, any kind of privileges. Littlefinger, of course, he wasn't a nobody. Like, he was a landowner. He was part of the landowning class in Westeros, but he married his way into royalty near enough. Or like, certainly, like, well, not, well, yeah, I suppose, like, or like royalty adjacent. So yeah, I don't know. Good on Littlefinger, I guess. Hey, he's using his wily charms to marry his way into power. He's using his.
He's in it for the long haul. It sounds
Yeah.
like he's been at the game for a long time.
Yeah. Well, he's using his handsome ways to operate the levers of power. So, yeah, I get. Yeah, see, look, there's Littlefinger challenging the gender norms of Game of Thrones too from the other side.
If he gets enough power, he'll become Goldfinger. Got enough rings on there.
Yeah. I'm excited for the next episode.
Yeah, me too. Let's see what happens.
It'll be good.
Yeah. Cool.
It's nice to have a show to watch again.
It is. It's nice to have it back.
It's all
And
like 1 week at a time instead of all dropped together at once.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Nice to talk about it too.
Yeah, it is. I that's the thing about Netflix, and like even with The Witcher, that I really didn't like, is that it just dumped it all on you. The Witcher would have been so much better if they gave it to you a week at a time.
Well, it definitely helps. The releasing definitely helps with this format.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of
In fact,
it's kind of like tempting, like not to binge all of it when it's all available, But
yeah, well, that's the thing. I think like I don't know if I'm overplaying this, but like Netflix have been going through some problems lately. They've not been having the growth projections that they were expected to, and it's like releasing timed releases are all part of the marketing strategy. Like HBO could easily drop all of Game of Thrones at once, and they decided not to. Disney Plus could do the same thing with any of their Star Wars properties. They decide not to.
Well, I think they want people to stay on the platform and be long-term, and be enrolled in the platform, and not just show up to watch something and then stop their subscription. So that's, I think that's part of it, is why they release it at a time, so people will stay on the platform until it comes out and talk about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's certainly like a benefit to that kind of release model for sure.
Yeah.
But I think as well, like, when The Witcher came out, particularly season 2, I watched it, I enjoyed it, and then I moved on to the next thing, like it was a long film. Like, it might as well have just been a long film. Whereas with Game of Thrones, there's something to look forward to every week, there's something to chew over, there's something to talk about. Like, shows like these,
you can build stuff around it if it's released gradually.
Well, shows like these, to me, like, they're a social experience. They're something that you watch and enjoy with other people, and you talk about it around the water cooler, and
There's just not a hub for it. The only hub, I mean, we have a Discord server to talk about it, but the majority of people are relying on like any other place, not to get too off topic, probably to talk about it, where it's by the water cooler or it's like on their Facebook wall, They don't really have consistent structure, I guess, but I guess there's some community around it, obviously, because it's being made, so people will talk about it, but I just don't know if it's going to like rely or on anything sustainably lasting from it, you know, unless it's released for a long time like it was for Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I don't want to like be the guy, but like I kind of thought that it would be good. Like I put my eggs in that basket, and I am not disappointed. So that's kind of a relief.
Well, let's see where it goes. You never know.
Cool. All right. Any closing thoughts from anyone? I think I've said everything I need to say.
My brother walked by when I was watching it. He watched them with me, and there was the scene where the king was, after he hurt his hand, he was like holding his hand over the candles. And my brother's like, "What is he cauterizing his cut with candle fire?"
Yup.
Nope.
No,
That
dragons
was
like
worth
it hot.
sharing.
Mhm.
I want to know
All right.
how long he worked in that sculpture, though.
I'm sure we could find that on the internet somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's in the book where he's all like, he's been working on it for 30 years.
Yeah. Nettie's never shared it with anyone.
Nope.
Yeah.
That one little girl that walked in, you're like, excuse you.
This is my sculpture man cave.
What's it carved out of stone, right?
Is it? I don't know. What was he
Is
using?
it stone?
Was
It
he
looked like clay.
Oh yeah, no, it's clay, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Like,
All right.
it's a
Those are my
King
closing
Anna
thoughts.
sculpture. Look at him.
Yeah. All right. So, thank you, folks at home, for joining us. That's our podcast. We'll see you again in a week's time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Toodaloo.